Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Township of Wainfleet Council meeting, September 1st, 2020. Please stand for the national anthem. Okay, I would like to announce the land statement acknowledgement. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. Before we just get into the mayor's remarks, we're just going to change the order here a little bit this evening. On number 9, after delegations are done, we're going to do the SAW development discussion before the fire report, simply because the architect is online there, and rather than that person have to sit all evening for quite a while, we'll get them on their way as soon as we can. Okay, mayor's announcements. Please note the meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. All members of council are present in chambers, and so we will not be calling for recorded votes unless requested, which is something we had to do during the pandemic when we were Zooming. Some staff will continue to participate electronically. We ask everyone in the gallery to please maintain appropriate physical distancing and to keep your face covering on at all times while inside the building. Regular meetings are live streamed and available for replay on your YouTube channel. We encourage the public to view council proceedings from home when possible to reduce the close proximity of people in chambers. Regional Council will meet Thursday, September 17th. And our next regular meeting of council is scheduled for Tuesday, September 22nd, here at 7 p.m. Are there any councillor remarks? Councillor Cridlin.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Just want to let people know that the next full authority meeting of the MPCA is Thursday, September 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And so now we look to the adoption of previous council minutes from the 2 previous meetings, August 26th at 6 p.m. and August the 4th at 7 p.m. Are there any corrections, omissions, or errors in there? Okay, seeing none, those are passed. And now move on to delegations. So we have 4 delegations this evening, so that's quite a bit of time. Delegations are maximum 10 minutes. You'll see me, eye contact, I'll put my hand up with 1 minute and it's wrap-up time. So 10 minutes, please, at the most. The first delegation will be by Mr. Drew Wakeham, Long Beach Public Beach. And he has submitted a delegation to speak to that. I invite Mr. Wakeham to the platform, please. Podium. Yep. I think so, yeah, because otherwise, just pull, yeah, that's fine. Is the microphone on there, sir? Sorry.
Never done this. Yeah, so we have a cottage, or we consider it like a home along Long Beach, probably approximately 100 meters west of Augustine Road, Allowance Beach access. During the many overcrowded beach weekends, we can have 200 to 300 people overflowing the public beach section into the western portion of the private beach area. Many of these people are not from Wainfleet, but are from Toronto, Mississauga, Hamilton areas. Naturally, this raises COVID concerns. 200 to 300 people, very little social distancing. These people are mostly a form of the demographic of 40 or younger, which, as you know now, are the major cases of COVID and are, most likely carriers of COVID that could spread. We've approached people and have asked them politely and social distance at the same time if they're aware that this portion of the beach is private. And we often get like a variety of responses, such as Google Maps shows the beach as public. Facebook friends posts the beach as public. Some claim they've asked police, and they said that the police claim the whole beach is public. One woman from Mississauga sort of boldly state that no beaches in Ontario are private. So these are the kinds of things we're dealing with. So we feel it's important to sort of educate the public and make sure the police are informed of what part of Long Beach is public and what part is private. Okay. Now I know you've all received a lot of complaints about the overcrowded beaches and people being very disrespectful of private property. But I would like to thank you for surveying the Township Allowance Beach access. And thank you for putting up township signs marking the boundaries of the public portion of the beach and stating, private property beyond this limit, please respect the privacy of our neighbors. So we really appreciate that. And most recently, I'd like to thank you for putting up the no parking signs in the various back roads around the Augustine Road beach access. On the weekends, there's enough cars along those roads to fill up pretty much 2 large parking lots. Unfortunately, even with the signs on the beach, we still have confusion and ambiguity of the boundaries of the public beach and how these township signs align. So we were to help clarify to the public and the police the boundaries of the public beach. We would, is it possible, can we have a rope, a fence, stone pylons that align the township signs and clearly mark the western boundary and the eastern boundary of the public beach? Now, I know you put up a wooden fence, and that fence was taken down and burned, and that's quite unfortunate, but I'm sure there's an alternative that, can be more of a permanent solution to this, marking these boundaries. We also thought it would be good if we could have a sign posted at the Augustine Road beach entrance that shows the mapping of the public area versus the private area. On your township website, you have a posted picture showing that mapping, and I think it's quite good. So I think that would be ideal if you had that picture transposed just at the entrance on a sign, sort of giving people, you know, making it clear to them where these boundaries align, kind of thing. I mean, we as cottage owners, you know, we understand and accept the right of passage along the water edge of the private beach, but unfortunately, some people take advantage of this and they set up on the beach at the water edge and claim it's public beach. Sadly, we still have disrespectful people on the private beach who come in large groups, set up their canopies and tents, barbecues, loud music, drinking, smoking pot, urinating, defecating on private property, and changing on property. And all of them are of the entitlement that this is a public beach. And they are allowed to do this. So we feel that if the public beach boundaries are made clear to the public and the police, we think it could really help empower the cottage owners to contact police and have these disrespectful people removed from the private beach. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wakeham. So we'll just have a motion to receive the delegation presented by Drew Wakeham respecting Long Beach Public Beach be received for information. Mover seconder, Councillor Gilmore and Councillor McClellan. And discussion and questions. You may have some questions, Mr. Wakeham. I don't know if we have any questions. Any questions of that? Councillor McClellan?
You, Mr. Mayor, not so much a question as a comment. I think as a council, we've all agreed we have to get this straightened out this winter. We've lost this season. We were behind the 8 ball. There's a few issues that we can't talk about right now, but we will try and endeavor to have this right for springtime.
Yeah, I saw the August 4th meeting, and we appreciate your efforts, and we understand, you know, it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
You know, and a lot of us hope that come the winter, come next year, something really can be put in place to resolve the issue, and you won't forget about us. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, thank you, sir. Seeing none then, have a vote on this motion to receive this report. And we can just have a show of hands. All in favor of receiving, and that report is received. Thank you. Okay, next delegation is Marianne Kidd, Lakeshore Enhancement Strategy Official Plan. And again, 10 minutes, and I'll give you the 1 minute signal when we're there. And go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable councillors. Thank you very much for allowing me to present today at this through the delegation. I made a little slideshow here so that we could all go over it. I just wanted to do essentially a business review for the Long Beach area. I do want to note for the record that with regards to the parking issue, I understand that our legal representation has submitted a letter as well in the agenda package. So I just want to, if we could take a look at the slides right now. It's kind of hard to see because there's some people in the right corner there, but on the top right corner of the slideshow, you can see actually that is the Augustine Beach area, and that was on Sunday. I actually was there. I took some pictures. You can see people were socially distancing. There was plenty of room for more people to come. It was really nice. I even brought my dog, and he was able to socially distance, but make some friends with some other dogs. And then when you look down at the bottom right picture, I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. This is actually one of our new business owners in the area, the Long Beach Resort. They've actually really fixed up the Long Beach Resort area, and on the beach side itself, they've actually created a really nice area for the public and vacationing tourists to come and use their beach resort for the day. They have different things to offer, and actually they're accepting paid admission in order to use the private beach in the area. So that's just something I wanted to point out so that everybody is also aware of this as we go forward through the presentation. And, just before we make any other, rash decisions on bylaws or zoning, I just wanted to take a step back and really look at the bigger picture here. I mean, this year, COVID has played an integral role in a lot of the decisions that are being made, but we do need to look at the long-term vision for the Long Beach area as well. So who am I? My name is Mary Ann Kidd, and my husband Neville Kidd is here, and we're the owners of the Concessies property. And I'm here also to represent 905 Rentals, who we've got Brian Grant, who's a local Wainfleet resident, born and raised, and he's actually owned the business for 5 years. My husband and I have also owned Concessies for about 5 years. And then we've got the Hungry Putter, who is Carl and Lenny Buffalino, and they've owned that business for about 9 years. And just to put things in perspective, our businesses are tourist dependent. We're open for basically 2 out of the 3 businesses are only open in July and August, and our business is open usually from May until the end of August. And this year, due to COVID, we had to make the hard decision not to open. Just want to point out that all 3 of our businesses, the owners need to work in the off-season full-time in order to support these businesses. They're not huge money makers. We've invested in the community because, this is our home. We love the community. We love Wainfleet, and we have a vision, for a long-term investment to hopefully, pay off our mortgages and, be able to hopefully achieve some, increases in inflation. So what are some of the good things that we've brought to the community? Job creation. Concessies has hired a minimum of 9 employees each summer for the last 5 years. The Hungry Putter has 18 employees each summer over the last 9 years. 11 of them are actually local or actual, the cottage owners in the area. They actually work there or their children do. And 905 Rentals as well has had 2 employees for each summer over the last 5 years. We're hiring students and other adults who may not be working. Many people don't have prior work experience. We're teaching them skills like handling money, recycling, cooking, inventory, as well as getting them to have their food handler certification. Garbage cleanup. Although we only have access to 4 bags of garbage per week, we still continue to dispose of public garbage as well that's created by the tourists in the area. And that's okay. That's the cost of doing business for us. Over the last 5 years, the 905 Rentals were acting as stewards of the beach access, cleaning up garbage, patrolling people who get out of hand. For example, they were the ones who called the police when the snow fence was taken down and burned. And they also advocate for safety of the water vehicles, many times when it's not their own being rented and people are driving too close to the shoreline. But this year, they've had to stop that because they've received cease and desist orders from this council. We spend dollars back in our community. Both Concessies and the Hungry Putter patronize local stores. And all of us also donate gift certificates to various things that are happening in the community, like Steak and Doughs, fundraisers, etc. We also support local vendors and crafters, At my business, we've sold wood, blueberries, candles, earrings, jewelry, popcorn, soap, and honey, to name a few. We're involved in the community. We're members of the local Chamber of Commerce. My husband, Neville Kidd, is actually the president of the Port Colborne and Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce. We've also held meetings with Clearford Water to encourage solutions to water issues, which also affects the surrounding cottage owners. As we talk about bringing in industry and other types of businesses to Wainfleet, I just want to point out that we actually have businesses right in our lakeshore area. Let's face it, we are a tourist community, and there is nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing. You wouldn't know, though, if you were reading the newspapers or things like that lately, because it seems like we really want to discourage people from coming. There's other businesses in the area, including the new Long Beach Resort, who have taken out all those crappy trailers that were along the lakeshore, and they're really trying to put money into it and make it nicer for our community. You've got new owners who have invested in DJ's Restaurant. There's the Garden House Restaurant. We've got the Long Beach Conservation Campground. There will be a new beach at the Lakewood development. There's Horseplay Niagara. We've got the Corner Cafe and the Esso. There's even a food truck and a convenience right across from the Long Beach Conservation, as well as our Long Beach Country Club. One of the things that we don't see a lot of is, what's the plan for some of our commercial vacancies that are actually in place right now? We're trying to promote other types of businesses, but we actually have commercial zoned properties that need to be looked at. For example, the Cove, there's Kay's Bait and Tackle in between Concessies and the Hungry Putter, as well as a lot in between Concessies and DJ's. These are all C2 tourist commercial businesses that could be bringing vibrancy to our community. Let's not forget the countless cottage owners who rent out their cottages to lots of visitors who come to our area. The cottage owners are not the only ones who have issues with people coming to our area. We don't like the jerks either. Personally, I've had kitty litter put into our recycling bins, dirty diapers. Just this morning, the Hungry Putter actually had people parking in their blocked off parking area. And then what we did in 2014, we started talking with the town, and we applied for lakefront enhancement strategy money. This was free money that was given to us, and the items we put in place included a boardwalk for better accessibility for paramedics, bike racks, a porta potty, special grasses for erosion control, signage, as well as the last council actually opened Braun Road for free public access. We were promised nice bathrooms with a trailer and a hand sink. That never came to fruition. And prior to 2014, the township itself actually rented out parking lots and hired a summer student in order to monitor it. I do have some other slides. I'm going to skip over the next one just for time purposes. I'd like to go over a couple points in the official plan. We really need to take a look at that, because I think when you look at the official plan, it feels kind of like we're doing the opposite of what the official plan says when it comes to the lakeshore area. We're supposed to permit tourist and resort-related accommodation, as well as improve public access to the waterfront. Amber, can we switch to the next slide? I just want to mention that we've actually, because you guys have closed off parking to all of the residents in Wainfleet, plus other people who would use it as well, we've actually at Concessies put in some local resident Wainfleet parking so that people will have access to it. And, what I want to close off with is, what do the businesses want? We would just like you to support tourism in our area. Our goal is to implement a business improvement area, or a BIA, for the lakeshore as per the Municipal Act. We would propose new signages entering and exiting the Long Beach community. We would actually like you to remove the snow fences at the beach as they encroach on public waterfront parkland. We'd like you to help create a pickup drop-off zone. Like in the bottom right picture, you can see there's an area right there for it. And at the top, you can see there's a spot there for a porta potty. That would be perfect. And these are some of the solutions that we have to some of these issues that are being brought up. So in the end, I do have other slides in the presentation, but essentially we would like to use the Municipal Act and engage all the lakeshore business owners to open up a business improvement area where we can use that establishment to apply for things like grant money, to maybe hire a summer student to clean the beaches. There can be facade improvements, different things like that. So I'm requesting council to make a motion to have the staff start looking at implementing the bylaw for a business improvement area so that our businesses can be engaged in the solutions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kidd. I have a delegation presented by Mary Ann Kidd respecting a Lakeshore Enhancement Strategy. Official plan be received for information. Mover, seconder, Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan. And discussion or questions to our presenter, please. Okay, seeing nothing. Thank you very much, Ms. Kidd. And no discussion, so vote in favor of receiving that report, please. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to just do Mr. Goodwillie, because it's all the beach issue. Then we'll bring in SAW for the last one, and then we can work that whole project or that part through and be finished with it in one motion. So Mr. Goodwillie, and again, I remind you 10 minutes. And also Mr. Goodwillie, because you presented to us before, you can have to present new material to us today, so it's already been recorded the last time, all your information. So we're looking for some new information today. Thank you. And you have 10 minutes, and it starts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. You may recall that I was here earlier this summer on August the 4th, requesting action by council to control the trespassers and the threat of the COVID-19 outbreak on the private beaches at Long Beach. At that meeting, council passed a motion to install no parking signs on all roads leading to Lake Erie. Council also passed a motion to close down the 4 private parking lots near the Augustine Road. Council appeared anxious to act to support the cottagers and get something in place quickly. But weekends passed and nothing happened. It took council administration nearly a month to get the no parking signs posted. And after nearly a month, council also decided to renege on the motion to close the private parking lots, which was a major disappointment for the cottagers. And council failed to take any action on the lack of social distancing, especially on the weekends. But then 4 small signs were posted in what appeared to be a random pattern on the Augustine Road access lane to Lake Erie. After consultation, it appears these were placed on the irregular lot boundary lines, but there was no rope or snow fence linking them to delineate the narrow beach access. And there were no signs like they are at the Furry Conservation Park, where the signs are on the fence. And so when the trespassers arrived again last weekend, they merely walked around the signs to find their camping spot on the private beaches. Since Niagara Region Police took over from Wainfleet the responsibility to patrol the beaches, we have not seen any police presence on the weekends or during the week. And it takes 3 to 4 hours to get a response to the site by the Niagara police. It would be better for council to spend the money derived from the parking fines to ensure the public are prevented from trespassing on the private beach. And so now the summer season is ending this Saturday. What has council and the administration accomplished? They've failed to enforce the social distancing on the beach. They've failed to provide effective support for the private cottage owners' requests for control of their property. They've upset 3 of the 4 parking lot operators, even though they are breaking the law. They've provided no police protection for the private property owners. They've failed to notify the public in any effective way that the beaches at Long Beach are not public beaches. And I hear this just in the previous presentation, that the assumption of the business people is that the beaches at Long Beach are open to the public, and this is not true. On the other side of the coin, they've finally erected some signs, and they've promised to put money in next year's budget to do what they didn't do this year. And they're contemplating a public meeting after many of the cottagers have left for the season, and it's still even questionable whether the 50% absentee American owners will be able to be included on this in that meeting. Here are some things that I think would be helpful to the council to investigate over the next 9 months. Install no stopping signs on Augustine Road. This would be in addition to the no parking signs, and this would make it much more inconvenient and uncomfortable for those coming to the beach, as they would have to walk quite a bit further to even get to the laneway. Encourage the cottage owners to establish their own boundary fence on the west side of the lane. It worked very well on the east side of the lane, where people did not cross the boundary on the side closest to the point. We would like for you to mount an aggressive information campaign about Long Beach and eliminate mention of Long Beach as a Wainfleet beach. A road allowance is not a beach, and that's what the council owns on the Long Beach property. So people will not be encouraged to come to Long Beach. I was just noticing, even in this previous slide, the signs said that the zoning, or the official plan, recognizes Wainfleet, the Long Beach at Long Beach, and it's not. 66 feet does not constitute a beach, and I think that the council and the people, the business people, and the tourists that come have to be educated in the fact that Long Beach is not a public beach. Long Beach is not really even a beach. The other thing would be to hire a security company to control access to the private beach, at least for the first couple of weekends next year. This way, they could stand at the western entrance to Long Beach and advise people that they're going on private property and they're not allowed to do that. And that would certainly solve the situation, I think, quite succinctly. And so, where do we go from here? Will we face the same problems again next year? Mr. Mayor, councilors, you now have 9 months to develop and implement an effective action plan. I hope I don't have to get up before council next June to ask what you plan to do for the coming summer months. And I hope the private property owners will not have to take the action for you. Thank you.
Okay, just stay there, Mr. Goodwillie. I thank you for that presentation. And the delegation presented by Hugh Goodwillie respecting Long Beach issues be received for information. Of a mover, seconder, Councillor Cridland, Councillor Van Vliet to move it. Any discussion? Any questions? No, it's a big topic. It's very complex, as you say. Because of the complexity of it, I did ask staff to put together a meeting. We're hoping to do that in September, late September. we just can't make it work sooner. Everybody who has a vested interest will have to be at that meeting, including the American cottage owners who we want to zoom in.
Thank you.
This is a very important, complex problem. It's not as simple as what you state, as what the other presenters have stated. We have no say on private land. It's private land. We don't get to say what happens on that private land. But there are things that we can do to move forward to try to make it work for everybody. I don't know if there's a perfect solution. Our CAO found a document from 1946 that listed all the same things that you just stated. It's been going on that long.
It has.
And I don't know if there is a solution, but if everybody comes to the table and works together, I'm hoping we can get somewhere with this. We are trying, and that's an important thing to know. We've tried to come up with solutions, and then the other side of the coin, has something, well, that's not working for us, and so it's very complex. So that meeting is going to be very important, and I think tonight we're going to pick the date when that is. Okay, we mover seconder, no discussion or questions. All in favor of receiving that report, and that is received. Okay, we now move on to SAW Developments for their presentation, and then we'll move right into the SAW report. Thank you, Mr. Buter, and 10 minutes, please, and I'll give you the 1 minute if you get that far.
I won't be that long.
I don't think you will.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I just like to thank you for taking the opportunity to look at my subdivision. We're anxious to get started on it. It's been a long time coming. If you have any thoughts or concerns I can address tonight, I'd be happy to speak to that, and that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we look to, thank you for the presentation, and we look to receive that, please, and then we'll have discussion. Mover, seconder, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet, and discussion or questions to Mr. Buter. Councillor McClellan.
This is a discussion probably not for Mr. Buter or to Mr. Buter, but it's about this project. Reading through this subdivision agreement, I know I don't know enough about it. I'm not sure that, I don't know how many the township has signed over, I don't know how many the township has signed over the last 10 years, maybe one. I am suggesting that we have the 4 municipality agreement. Maybe we go to Welland and just let them read through this before we let it go. Now, I know the road is paved with good intentions and everybody's good, but God forbid something happen to Mr. Buter and somebody else buys this and we get it, and if there's not enough money in the letters of credit, the town's on the hook to pay that. I think it's very important we do our job to make sure there's enough money in the letters of credit that none of our taxpayers get stuck paying for something. So I don't think it'd take long to put through the city of Welland and see what they do. They do this on a regular basis. It wouldn't take a lot of time, and then it's done, and at least we know we're in the right place.
Okay, so we'll get into discussion when we bring up the issue. Right now, we're just receiving the report. Any questions about Mr. Buter's report? It's moved, it's seconded, so all in favor of receiving that report? Okay, that report is received. And so now we will move into SAW Developments. And I'm going to ask Sarah Ivans, our planner, to speak to that, and she's on Zoom. You can have a seat, Mr. Buter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So council granted draft approval for the subdivision back in July of 2019, and that approval was subject to 41 conditions. Since receiving approval, the developer, so SAW Developments, has been working to fulfill these conditions, and they submitted a formal request for final approval in June of this year. So all of the 41 conditions imposed on the draft approval have been or will be fulfilled, and a chart listing those 41 conditions along with SAW Development as well as staff comments is attached as Appendix A to the report. And the purpose of this chart was to identify how each condition has been or will be fulfilled. Also attached to the report is the subdivision agreement that Councillor McClellan mentioned in his comments, and that's attached as Appendix B. So that agreement, a template was provided by the town of Pelham. So we did use another municipality that has experienced more development than Wainfleet as a starting point. Then the SAW Developments team took that template and we created an agreement that I think is fair for both SAW and the township to facilitate the development. So both myself and other members of staff have had an opportunity to review and comment, as well as township legal. Once the plan of subdivision is registered, we'll be creating a new municipal road allowance and a new municipal road. Staff have approved the name being Jacob Lane, and to formalize its approval, an amendment to bylaw 42 of 2010 will be required to add it as a name to the municipal and private road bylaw. And that amending bylaw is attached as Appendix C in my report. So my recommendation this evening is that the bylaws to authorize execution of the subdivision agreement and to amend the road names bylaw be adopted by council, and that staff be authorized to grant final approval upon execution of the subdivision agreement.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I'm just going to pick up on Councillor McClellan's concern about the letters of credit. So I'm just wondering, Sarah, Will, either one, are you comfortable with the amounts of the LCs, and are they consistent with what other jurisdictions would request for something this size?
Yes, so we're comfortable. Again, staff have had a look at it, and it's comparable to some other developments in the area. So we're comfortable with the letter of credit amounts that we've requested in the agreement.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on that? So we have gone to another jurisdiction and worked in partnership with them and learned. Mr. CAO, I think you were looking to say something about that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, as Councillor McClellan noted, Wainfleet does not have a heavy development load or a big history of these types of agreements. And again, through the planning department and the peers and colleagues of Sarah, we did do a sort of market search, if you will, for what other municipalities use in their types of agreements, and use that as a basis. So kudos to Sarah for pulling that together, and again, working with the applicant to make sure that the agreement contains clauses that reflect the needs of the township, which are a little different perhaps than some of the typical subdivisions you'd see in a typical urbanized area. But nonetheless, as Sarah indicated, it has been reviewed by all senior staff and all departments, and there is a general consensus that the contents of it are satisfactory at this time.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
So my question still stands. Why would we not ask the biggest municipality that we're part of this four-partner agreement with? They do more of them than Pelham. They do more of them than Port Colborne. They certainly do more than we do. And I have nothing against this. I'm just asking, can we make sure we're covered? Because it comes down on us to do our job. It might be a week, Sarah, to go to Welland and do a quick look at it. I don't have a problem with that. I'd just like to know that we are covered.
So the only thing with that is I mean, we've gone to Pelham. We've used Pelham's examples. It's gone through staff. Sarah, who, trust me, dots the I's and crosses the T's and makes sure things are done the way they're supposed to be, according to the laws of Ontario, has put this together in conjunction with SAW Developments. my opinion is to go to Welland is to simply delay something that, you know, we could just move ahead with. So, Councillor McClellan.
So again, we're not delaying anything. He hasn't finished all the rest of the conditions. So he can't start, he can't do anything till the conditions are met. We'll have an answer before his conditions are met. And I'm not picking on Mr. Buter or anybody else. I just want to make sure we're covered.
Sarah, do you have something more to add to that, please?
Yeah, so if I may, Mr. Mayor, so they have complied with all 41 conditions. When I say in my report will be fulfilled, that's because the subdivision agreement ticks off quite a few of those conditions. So until that's executed, those conditions aren't deemed fulfilled. So that's where the language in my report comes. As far as I'm concerned, between the stuff that the developer has provided and the contents of the subdivision agreement, I'm comfortable ticking off each of those conditions, each of the 41 conditions. So if council chose to direct staff to present this agreement to another municipality such as Welland that has a little bit more experience with this type of development, I can do so, but we wouldn't be able to grant final approval this evening. And this would have to come back on September 22nd because the agreement is attached as a schedule to the bylaw. So we wouldn't be able to pass the bylaw this evening if perhaps there are changes that come from that consultation. So I wouldn't feel comfortable having that bylaw passed and then going to another municipality and then having to come back with changes if the case warrants that.
Any other discussion or input? Councillor McClellan?
Can we just ask Mr. Buter if it goes a month, if it's going to delay all of his?
Yeah.
I'd like to address that question. My name is Ryan Bath. I work for SAW Developments. I'm the project manager there. Mayor, councillors, thank you for allowing us to speak and seeing us today. Throughout the process, I've been very heavily involved in the development of this subdivision, the agreement, the plans, and I must say we've been through a pretty rigorous approval process, getting this development and the agreement together. It's already been gone to the Niagara region over 2.5 months ago for them to review the agreement. We had agreements from the town of Pelham. We also had the agreements from the Memi Court subdivision that you guys had passed in the past. We basically took 2 of those together and we heard everybody's comments that they had from everything else, and that's how we created this agreement. It's been reviewed by the Niagara region. It's been reviewed by the NPCA. It's been reviewed by the MTO. It's had a very rigorous approval process before we could even get to this point. The remaining conditions that Sarah is mentioning are basically the execution of this meeting and the registration of the subdivision. Those are the only conditions that have been yet to be fulfilled. And we've been going back and forth with the region on a daily basis, getting this thing together for you guys and for the staff report. I would just like to hope that you believe us and Sarah that we've done a very thorough review of getting everything together.
Thank you, Mr. Bath. Any other questions?
No, I'd like to thank this gentleman. I got more information out of him than I got out of reading this report, so thank you.
If I might add, could I?
Yep, go ahead.
The security depositor, the letter of credit, that only covers the road construction. Mm-hmm. The hydro has a whole other process that's taken care of with an additional letter of security and, well, actually cash up front. So the road base is a very straightforward 380 meters of road construction, ditches and culverts. It doesn't look, it's a substantial amount of work, but it's absolutely not a huge amount because there is very little infrastructure, and the infrastructure that is covered from a hydro standpoint is completely secured by an agreement through Ontario Hydro. So just to be clear on that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there's no further discussion or questions, I think that planning staff report PSR 009-2020 be received and that the bylaw attached as Appendix B be adopted by council to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the subdivision agreement with SAW Developments Incorporated, and that the bylaw attached as Appendix C be adopted by council to amend bylaw 42-2010 to add Jacob Lane to the consolidated list of street names, and that staff be authorized to grant final approval upon execution of the subdivision agreement. May I have a mover and a seconder on that, please? Moved by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet. Any final discussion? Okay, we'll have a vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back now to, in the agenda, to number 9, fire staff reports. Councillor McClellan.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed, just council and the clerk, or the acting clerk, at this time.
Okay, I'll look to the CAO for direction on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is a motion that certainly can be considered. The question will be the grounds on which we're going into closed session for. We would need to put some detail in any motion indicating the subject, the broad subject matter, and the rationale under the Municipal Act for going into closed.
Go ahead.
An identifiable person.
Is that sufficient?
For you, Mr. Mayor, there is a provision in the Act that allows us to go into closed session to discuss personal matters regarding identifiable individuals. So if that is something that is necessary or warranted to discuss, then by all means, council has the ability to do so either now or potentially later in the meeting. Although based on the discussion, based on the presentation, I'm guessing Councillor McClellan would prefer to do it now.
So I'm guessing this is item specific, and then later on in the agenda we have our other normal closed session. So we'll go do this. It's an identifiable subject. We'll come back and carry on with the open until we get to the next section of the closed. Is the way I'm seeing this. Okay, so we have a motion to go into closed about an identifiable person. May I have a seconder on that? Or mover, seconder? Sorry? Okay, there's a mover. Do we have a seconder? There's a motion. Moved the motion, seconded. Okay, all in favor going into closed? And we're going into closed session. So we were going to do closed in here. However, we'll have to go into the back room, I think. Masks on for the social distance aspect of it. And we'll move into closed now. Thank you. Too long.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're obviously back to open, and we're now moving into our fire staff report, Central Fire Station Concept Study. And I look to Chief Alcott. Would you like to give an overview of...
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, sorry, Will. Go ahead.
Before proceeding into that, can I rise with report?
Yes, certainly.
And consideration of the subject matter in closed session concluded with direction to staff to deal with the personal matters regarding identifiable individuals.
Thank you. Okay, Chief, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and all of Council. At the August 4th meeting, staff presented the FSR 10 concept study, which was prepared by White Line Architects, which provided a concept floor plan and exterior design with cost estimates for 4 different construction methods. Following that meeting, Council requested staff to investigate more options of construction methods and return to Council with an updated study. Staff contacted the firm to conduct further review and provide more information. In the meeting this evening, we have Steve Bernier from White Line Architects. He's here should there be any questions from Council following this presentation. The concept design study was undertaken to provide information into the spatial needs, design, accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities or facilities accessibility design standards compliance, and provide current estimated project costing. The exterior appearance and finishes were selected taking a middle-of-the-road approach following the direction of Council in balancing longevity, aesthetics, and costs. A masonry skirt and accent walls provide a contrast to the more cost-effective vertical steel siding, provides a building that fits well within the culture of the community, brings a sense of pride, and manages the financial expectations both short and long term. In the original report, option 1 was concrete block load bearing with an interior walls and wood truss roof. During that discussion, the comment was made that there should be no wood in the building, so staff requested that the firm provide option 1.1, which would be a steel truss roof, which you'll see as on page 6. Staff was also directed to investigate insulated metal panels used on steel frame structure, option 5. We conducted the site visit as requested of the warehouse being built on North Service Road, just west of Victoria Ave. During that site visit, I did take some pictures of the building being built. It is a large distribution center, not very similar to what we're building here. While I was there, I also looked into the insulated metal panels and contacted the manufacturer of those panels directly. I proceeded to ask the representative various questions, which is all presented in Appendix C, as well as the photos that I've taken there. In the end, we've come back with option 5, but as you can see, both from the information provided from the IMP manufacturer as well as the concept study, there is no real cost savings. Option 6 and 7 was developed for Council's consideration based on varying priorities. Option 6, which is a insulated concrete form, is presented here if energy efficient building was the highest priority for Council, then that is an option. It's presented here. It is very costly to build, isn't used often in fire stations, if any, and it is difficult to renovate. Option 7, which is more in line with what we would see in, say, Fort Erie or St. Catharines, which is a load-bearing concrete block building with a full masonry exterior veneer. Again, this building would be the longest lasting and is the most expensive. However, it does come with its trade-offs being difficult to renovate and some other issues there. Based on the comments made during the last council meeting, the other firm that was contacted and submitted a quote contacted me and wanted to provide the following information in support of the original concept study. That firm provided me in writing, and I'll just read out what they provided here. A pre-engineered building does have a reduced lifespan and an increased life cycle cost. A pre-engineered structure is not a bad thing. However, they are generally used for utilitarian-type buildings, warehouses, and shops. The life cycle does not compare to more conventional buildings, and further, the Ontario Building Code mandates fire stations are required to be designed as post-disaster buildings. A pre-engineered building would be cost prohibitive to meet that requirement. Further, the Ontario Building Code requires a building to comply with supplementary standard SB 10 for energy efficiencies. A pre-engineered building would not comply due to the thermal bridging of the envelope components. Finally, you can consider a pre-engineered steel frame clad in conventional materials. However, you would need to reinforce the structure or add to the structure to achieve the post-disaster qualification. This would put any perceived economies out of reach. You are better going with the tried and true conventional construction, provided durability and longevity, and that is provided by the other design firm that didn't provide this study. In review of these priorities that were set by council and the fire service personnel from the survey that was conducted in December of 2019, there was 5 priorities: health and safety of the fire personnel, longevity of the building, energy efficient, cost effective, and sized appropriately for the project. Based on those priorities and expectations, staff recommend that option 1.1 best balances those priorities. So to reiterate, option 1.1 is concrete building with a steel structured roof and mixed exterior finishes, cladding. Based on the approved 2019 and 2020 budgets, Administrative Staff Report 16 outlined the financial impact of the project and provides a phased-in repayment plan. The Township's website also has a couple of examples of how that project may impact the community. So if there's any questions, to myself or Steve.
Okay, first we'll read the motion, put it on the floor, that Fire Staff Report FSR 11-2020 respecting Central Fire Station Concept Study additional options be received, and that a request for a proposal be undertaken to select a firm for the design, engineering, and contract management associated with the new facility, utilizing a load-bearing concrete block, steel truss roof construction, and mixed exterior cladding as presented as option 1 in the concept study. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, put on the floor by Councillor Cridlin, seconded by Councillor Van Vliet, and now we have discussion. Councillor Cridlin.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Thank you again for that good report. But just first of all, just sort of technical, we're on the second that, and I'm not sure, because again, this isn't my area of expertise, but if we could split that, I'm not sure it would help, but that we talk about the option, and maybe this isn't the right order, but maybe we talk about the option 1 first, recommendation, and then after that's resolved, then we go ahead with the second request for proposal to be undertaken. So if that's, I think there's 2 things there, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'll just look to the CAO just to see.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's the wish of council to split that into 2 separate resolutions, 2 separate that by all means, that's certainly able to be done.
Is that good with everybody? We don't need to vote on that. Okay, go ahead.
So through you, so then we'll go with the first part, which is then the option. So the discussion then will be about the option from here on. Well, I think I can support option 1 based on the work I've seen so far. But again, I know I'm not necessarily the expert in the room, but we've now explored the one that is most or energy efficient. So that has been presented. So thank you for that. I'm certainly happy to see that the steel has been added to the roof, because that's feedback from our last council meeting, so thank you for that. So when we're talking about option 1, maybe I'll just let others then talk about what option they think is the appropriate option. Right now I can support option 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I'd like to thank you for the reports. As usual, they're really good. I would agree with Councillor Cridlin that I like option 1 because, like her, I don't know enough about it. I know somewhat, and I went over this with my husband who helped me and friends who helped me, and I'm liking option 1. That's all.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, basically option, well, 1.1 and 7 are essentially identical. Is that, I mean, other than the fact that the other has complete brick veneer and no metal, they're identical. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
So it's odd that the estimated cost per year would be higher when on a brick veneer building versus a metal building, because the metal is going to require attention sometime in 75 years, whereas it's highly unlikely brick veneer would. So I'm just, like, to me, the difference is under $100,000, which is a lot, but over 70, you divide it over 75 years. Like, some of these numbers kind of bother me a little bit, but those two are exactly the same except for the exterior. But I'm just not quite buying the cost to maintain it, because to me, brick veneer is complete brick veneer is a lot better than having, like, metal on the outside is good and it's fine, but it doesn't last 75 years without attention, whereas a stone finish generally does.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the estimated cost per service life is just the estimated project cost divided by the 75, or the estimated service life. It does not include having to replace the facade in 35, 40 years. So you're right. Option 1.1, in an attempt to reduce initial project costs, does carry higher maintenance costs in the long term. But the idea there was we were balancing those priorities: longevity, cost effective now, energy efficient. So that's why 1.1 is a recommended option, because it does reduce the project cost now, understanding that we will have to budget accordingly for maintenance down the road.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I wonder, does anything that the architect may add to us here that just help us along in any decision processes or questions to the architect?
I'm open to any questions.
Councillor McClellan.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sir, thank you very much, Stephen. I have a question for you. The basic size of this fire hall for a community this size, does this typically fit? It seems very large to me.
Honestly, it is a little bit larger, not in terms of the office space and the meeting space, but more the number of bays. But you are also the location of this is going to be sort of centralized in Wainfleet. So I understand that Morgan's gone through the numbers, and these are the number of bays that are required.
It's actually not the bays that bother me, it's the office space. There's almost 6,000 square feet. I couldn't really read your drawing because there was a few dimensions left off on the front of it, but it says 5,800 square feet. I'll take your word for it, but there's a few dimensions missing. To check it, and when I do all of the dimensions on this thing, my number comes out to closer to 14,000 square feet when you take the upstairs mezzanines, and they all cost money. So when we're pricing this out, I hope that's the number you're using and not the lower number, so we don't get a shock later.
No, the mezzanines are priced as a separate line item in the cost estimates.
Okay, I have a question for the architect.
Sure.
With COVID right now, and I understand some people are saying material and construction costs have gone way up. How does that factor in here? If there's been a 30-40% increase in construction material is one number I heard, as well also the availability of some materials for us to do this. Do you have any input or knowledge on that?
Currently, yes, some materials have gone up, especially wood and wood construction, and also the amount of housing that's going up right now. The trades involved with framing are going to be at a bit of a, you're going to be at a bit of a disadvantage to get them. But if you're selecting either option number 1 or 7, which would be the masonry construction, that's typically what's done in the Niagara region with most of the fire stations, and there is a good amount of masons in the area for this job to get done. Pricing on some materials has gone up, others has gone down, and it's also an issue right now currently to be able to get some products from the States. So whenever this goes out, I think a lot of us around here are just going to make a concerted effort to try and make sure everything is specified to be built in Canada and hopefully made in Ontario.
Okay, thank you. Question, other, Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you. Still not sure then what option we're going to land on, but part of my consideration then is, you know, if it was something that was a little bit more efficient or less maintenance costs, like Councillor Gilmore had suggested with option 7, I too have concerns about the office side. So I'm looking to find, you know, a couple thousand square feet on the office side to pull this all together. So if I was going to recommend an option 1 or 7, it would be then with the amendment of, you know, a reduced office side build. So I think the other items then could be managed. So if there was an easier way to frame that, is it better that we, you know, look at a couple areas in terms of square feet, or is it better from maybe the architect knows, you just say whatever that square footage is and we can just kind of move a few boxes around? Maybe that's for the architect.
Well, this was based on several meetings we had with Morgan and the other staff members to bring it down to this size. But obviously there's, you know, once you deal with your whatever architectural firm you end up hiring, you can work at trying to slim this down. So yes, there is opportunity to cut maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square feet off of this.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. So back to 1 versus 7 and the 2 green boxes on either end, that now I understand what the figures mean. Essentially, in the big picture, you're talking about $1,300 a year to have it all stone versus. So I can take it either way. I think what we did by splitting the motion is to decide which option that we want to go for, and then the second part we're going to get into some of the details that we've sort of been bouncing in and out of, correct? So, and then we'll decide about the size of it and anything else that we want to talk about. But at some point we have to come to some consensus on which style we like. I can take either way. I think that, in my opinion, in the big picture, long term, that 7 makes more sense without any steel on it, especially if you're going to renovate it, because as soon as you take that off to put an addition on, that is wasted. Mm-hmm. The stone can be an interior wall. Mm-hmm. Like, there's lots of things to do with stone. So that's just my thought, but I think at some point, Mayor, we need to decide, we need to first get some agreement on which option, and then we'll deal with the details.
Okay, other discussion, Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Gilmore. Sorry, didn't know if I was going to cough or sneeze there. With Councillor Gilmore, option 7, if we're building it, absolutely is the way to go. It'll last longer. There'll be less maintenance. And if you try and do a renovation and the metal is 20 years old, you'll never get the colors to match. So we'll go with that.
Okay, so end of discussion. Any more discussion? Somebody want, Councillor Morgan, Chief?
If I may add, Council already approved the size when we presented the spatial needs assessment at the January 28th meeting. It was at that point Council had the input when they set the priorities for the building. This concept and this plan, when it was presented, Council was in support of, and it's actually been reduced since then.
Okay, thank you. So, but right now we're determining the option of the build, Then we'll speak in the second part of it to the details. So I'm hearing that option 7 is a preferred choice, or option 1. Would somebody like to make a motion here on which one? Councillor McClellan?
So I have one more comment before we make that.
Go ahead.
Option 7 is the preferred, but knowing how materials are short, delays and times, if it's going to be a problem, we should come back and look at, or maybe we should just put now what option 2 is, because option 1 and 2 are the same thing. If you don't have materials for option 1 and 7 are the same. If you can't get the materials and there's going to be a long delay, we don't want to delay this thing. So do we pick another way to go? Because I know in my day jobs, you have to be flexible about what you're going to take for material, because it's exactly as Stephen said, sometimes you can't get what you want. And if you're putting up a building, sometimes you look at steel frames, sometimes you look at poured-in-place concrete, and sometimes you're looking at precast concrete to get it done. And, you know, it all depends what day of the week it is and what their timelines are, what product you take to build your project.
Okay, thank you. Chief, you had a comment?
So the intent, the next step after the option is selected is to go for design and engineering. Are you asking that the design firm design 2 buildings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we do is we go out and get some prices on what's available and what's not. So if the design firm can do that, and we generally do that ourselves, but we call the different trades or different entities on how you build things, and you ask what's your timeline, what's your date, and when are you available? And can we get you, some of these things are 2 years out before they can get to you. So you have to ask what's coming, and then we don't want to wait 2 years. So if this brick, and they tell you they're 18 months before they can start your job or get to you, you don't want that. That's why I'm saying we should look at different options so we're not stuck waiting. I know some of our projects we're told that it's 2 years before they can even get there.
Okay, good points. Anything further from anyone in regarding the selection of which option we wish to go with? Look to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if the architect might be able to provide some advice in that regard.
Yeah, whichever firm is selected to actually be the lead consultant on this, yes, we absolutely check. If we are going to specify a certain brick or a certain block, we obviously check if it's available. By the time this project is ready to actually go out for bids from the contractors, it's probably going to be next spring. And by the time the brick is actually needed, if that's your biggest concern, that would probably be late summer to fall next year. So that's quite a distance away. But we're always in contact with the contractor. If there's an issue with anything during construction, we usually find out months in advance, and we usually are able to pivot and be able to select something different. So I understand your concerns, but there can be accommodations made as the construction is going on to make sure that this doesn't delay anything.
Okay, thank you. Anything further to that, Councillor McClellan? You look like you have a...
I'm good.
Okay. Okay. First part of the motion. Can we, additional option, somebody make a motion on which option they wish to have, and we vote on that? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, in light of the discussion, I think that we should proceed with option 7 as the most long-term cost-effective method of construction.
Okay, so the motion from Councillor Gilmore is for the council to look at selecting option 7. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan is the seconder on it. Any other discussion? Okay, Councillor Van Vliet.
I'm just saying, once again, I don't know enough about this, and I'm trusting those who do know enough.
Okay, noted. Okay, all in favor of selecting option 7 as the build design for the Wainfleet Fire Building? All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we move on now to the second component of the motion. Select the firm for the design, engineering, contract management associated with the new facility, utilizing a load-bearing concrete block steel truss roof, which is option 7, mixed exterior cladding, but it's now brick. And that's already on the floor, so now I look for discussion on that. Councillor, no discussion? Councillor Gilmore?
Okay, well, to me, we're at the point where if we're going to discuss doing any modifications size-wise, then that's where we're at. So, so I think we need to have I think we need to have a discussion about phasing this, possibly. I'm not saying that we're not going to do the whole thing, but the more that I've thought about it, I think that possibly phasing this, excuse me, and doing the apparatus bays, everything that we agreed to surrounding firefighter safety, all that kind of thing, that we incorporate that. I have, and this is my personal opinion, I have a problem with the offices being transferred down there, and that's just my opinion. And I guess I would like to see it designed in 2 phases, where the apparatus bay, washrooms, and somehow incorporate the training room, obviously the mechanical room, and then have it designed and the site plan laid out accordingly, so that in the future, if we want to transfer office space, kitchen space, things like that, to that site, we can do it. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Okay, perhaps the architect could speak to that, of a 2-phase approach to building this, so financially it's maybe a little more manageable for us, and just what your thoughts are on that.
Well, and definitely it can be done. However, when you get to do the second phase, it's going to cost considerably more to add the office space onto the building at that point, when you get to that, whether it's 1 year or 10 years down the road. So obviously it's more cost effective to build everything at once. You're designing your septic system for that. You're designing your mechanical systems for that one time, rather than trying to go in and either add different mechanical systems to accommodate the office space, cutting into your roof, cutting into your walls, and possibly increasing your septic load. Because right now we would design this to meet the washroom requirements for not having offices there. But if you do have offices and your kitchenette and your lunchroom and everything for the association, that's all in the design at the get-go, and you're paying for it all at once, rather than probably paying almost double to add on in addition after. So my recommendation would be to do it all at once.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan?
So, Stephen, my question is, if we built it and we build the septic bed the size we need to plan show, we put in the right air handlers and heating equipment that we know we're going to need, all I'm worried about is, right now, this is a huge build. We still don't know what's going on with the whole economy and we're a small town. We didn't get hit, and we didn't get as bad as some places, but it's still coming at us. Like, if there's $1.5 million that can be saved here, and it costs us $2 million in 5 years from now, I really don't care if we put it there. I think it's the smart thing to do, rather than get ourselves in trouble. We have a very small budget in this town. I don't know if you've even looked at it, but it's probably less than this building's going to cost us for 1 year.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from anyone? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would totally disagree with doing it in phases like that and agree with the architect. If it's going to cost us that much money, I want to do it, get it over with, get it done.
Hey, Chief.
If the intent is to save the taxpayers' money, phasing it in will cost more. Based on the repayment plan that has been laid out by the treasurer, we know that it is a phased-in repayment with utilizing 2 different debentures. You would effectively be handcuffing the future generations at a higher expense.
Yeah, and just bear in mind the treasurer has worked on the numbers on this from every angle, and it is an affordable thing for us. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's huge for Wainfleet. I have also been in contact with the Premier himself on this. I've been in contact with our MP. So we are working as well to solicit funding or assistance in funding or low-cost loans. All sorts of options have been floated. And even without that, even if we got some money from another level of government, our treasurer says we can afford this. So if I keep working those lines, and if we get fortunate and get something from another level of government, which COVID might be harder now, but that's bonus to us. So our treasurer has said that we can afford what this costs, and we've all heard this many times. I just want to throw that out there again, that I have been working to meet with different people, different levels of government to try to obtain funding for this. So who knows if that comes forward? It may not, but apparently our treasurer has pounded out the numbers, and it's an affordable item for us anyway. So, Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I've heard it over and over, we can afford this. But I also heard that we have $19 million worth of bridges that need to be replaced in the next 10 years. Can we afford both? Because I can't make a bridge 1 foot shorter or 1 foot narrower. We can save some money here. And that's what I'm worried about, because $1.5 million save on this builds you a bridge. And that we have $19 million worth of bridges to build in the next 10 years. That was from the staff. I understand it's sexy to build a new fire hall and build it as big as it is. I have no problem building a fire hall. There's at least 2,000, 2,500 square feet in this building that doesn't need to be there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'll just pick 2 things then, because I don't know kind of how we're going to move forward and continue to move forward. So I'm just going to pick the fire chief office, and I know that we've agreed to some schemes that back in the day, and I'll go on record in saying I didn't know it was that final when I said yes to that. So that's on me. So I'm back now, trying to take a look at this and figure out, how does it all fit for me? And again, I like when Councillor Gilmore says personally, so this isn't on anybody else. But a fire chief office for a public servant of 12 by 16, that's just not right. And so we have a few of them, and that doesn't mean people don't deserve them. This is, again, taxpayers' money. So if I look at that and I see that it's X% larger than I feel is appropriate for a taxpayer, for something that it's not me paying for, it's everybody paying for, I want that same percent out of the whole, not the garages, but all the rest of the space. So that's one. And then the other thing is, again, I know we've talked about needs and wants, and so I'll just pull out the sign. There's a line item for a sign for $30,000. I can't do a $30,000 sign as a need. So if I take 2 things and I see that those are beyond what I can live with, I have to find some way to get this smaller, and I don't quite know how to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps the architect could speak to that?
Well, when we had our first initial meeting, we discussed the building code and the Ontario Disabilities Act and FADS as it relates to the station. And we were directed that this facility is to meet FAD standards, which the township has adopted. So that is the reason that a lot of these rooms are larger than normal, because to fit a wheelchair into these rooms and to have turning radiuses for wheelchairs. So part of the FAD standard is you have to have certain size hallways, certain size bathrooms, and certain size offices. So if the township decided to not adopt the FAD's standards for this building, yes, we probably could cut some square footage out of the offices and that admin wing. But that's something that the township would have to decide.
Okay, thank you. Was that adopted last year, Mr. CAO? Do you know, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that actually predates my time with the township. FADS was developed regionally right when the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act came out, and there's actually a regional document that sort of all the lower tier municipalities have sort of signed on to as being the standard, if you will, that we have when we build public buildings owned by the government.
So are we able to, okay, so we've adopted that regionally and within the municipality. Are we able to exclude a building, i.e. this fire hall, from that? I'm going to guess probably not, but if we could exclude that building from that, then that would allow us to cut a significant number of square feet and thereby reduce the cost. Comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to look into that, or I'd look to the architect for his thoughts. Again, throughout Ontario, one of the key accessibility issues that have been identified is that our workplaces, our buildings for the public and for workers that may at some point in time be occupying those buildings are fully accessible to all persons with disabilities, whether that's physical disability or visual or whatever. So again, I'd caution against that. At the same time, if there is sort of a desire to look at reduction of space, maybe that's something that we can be directed to go back to the architect with, review the needs study that was done previously, and see if there's alternatives for reducing the footprint.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan?
Yes, so I have a question just going on that. So if this building, if we don't have the offices in here for the chief and deputy chief, this is now a vacant building sitting there that anybody from the public that walks up to it can't get in. If you're lost, you can't go and ask directions because there's nobody there. If you need to use a washroom, you can't get in because there's nobody there. So there's likely no time except for when there's a fire going on that anybody will be in that building. There'll be some training going on, but there's a washroom that they can get to inside the shop, into the truck base. So it's still accessible if we're worried about a handicapped accessible, and make that bathroom a little bit bigger if we have to. But if we're not having administration in there, then it's not a public building. You're not getting in now. I don't know, Steve, you're the architect, but how does that make any sense? If the building's locked 24/7, 99.9% of the time, how does the public get into it?
Yeah, I agree. If you take the offices out, and certain municipalities have allowed, that do have FADs, have allowed the sort of the back of house where the suppression staff is to be separate from the office staff. So basically the change rooms and the bathrooms that you noted in here, you'll notice are not to FAD standards or to the OBC requirements.
Okay, thank you. Good point. Further, Chief, did you have your...
Yeah, I'd like to add that one of the council's priorities was that this building was supposed to last for 75 plus years. We also know that the existing buildings, Town Hall, the community center, are not FADS compliant. The only way that's going to occur is if we give up some of that space. When we're planning for a 75-year building, that is why the administrative side of the house was put in here, because where else were we going to put them?
Councillor McClellan.
Do you know that the office part of this fire hall is bigger than the building we're sitting in right now, the footprint? We're less than 3,000, we're just over 3,000 square feet. This is 5,800. It's almost twice what we have, and that's with a couple of dimensions missing. So like I say, we might be closer to the 6,000 than this paper's telling us. It doesn't make any sense. How many people do we have in the office while working in this building on a daily basis? Round number.
With COVID right now?
No.
They're cut in half, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So for a dozen people, we have 3,000 square feet. For two, we're going to put in almost 6,000. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the taxpayers are going to crucify us. We can't do this.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for clarity there, that 5,000 isn't office space. It's also including the training room, the kitchen, the lunchroom, the meeting room.
Oh, we
Correct?
have training rooms, we have meeting rooms, we have washrooms, we have offices
Right.
in this building, and we still have the people.
But I think the point of putting the administration there is to free up space for here so people can come in here, so everybody can be under one roof. I think that's where we went.
Wasn't
January
where I
or
went
whatever.
on it.
I think that's where our direction went, though.
I have never said go that big.
Okay, so is there an appetite then, I'm sensing, that, Chief, go ahead.
If I may, at the January meeting, when we first presented the concept plan, you held it up and said, I like this.
No, I can tell you I never did.
I'll get
Morgan, I can tell you I never did.
Okay, that's good.
Was
Any other comments about our fire hall? So my sense is that we talked about doing it in 2 phases. However, that's going to ultimately cost a lot more money 5 years down the road or whatever, or 10 years when the building, when we put the offices there, if they ever get to that. There's definitely a sense to either reduce the offices, but then there's a challenge there because of the disability laws that we must meet. And just for the public, there's many things here in this fire hall that are required by law. The structure itself must be disaster resistant, and so it requires heavier footings, heavier everything all the way through. So hence adding to the cost. So where do we want to go? Do we want to send this back for smaller offices or look at no offices? Do we want to see if we can shave 1,000 feet off it? Where do we want to go on this? Bearing in mind, as Councillor Gilmore said, choosing the build that we build, option 7 with a lifespan of 75 years. So we're not just building for, today or next year or even 10 years from now. If we do this right, this building will be in operation, 60, 70, 80 years from now, if we do it right. We all looked at the other fire halls and that were built in the 70s and even some in the 80s, and they're finding them too small. There's not enough room for this and that. There's always the growth factor. And so that's just one thing I'm aware of, and that's one thing that I think that we should keep our mind to. It's very important. It's not to say someday, in talking about disability, that we don't have a full-time clerk in the fire department and she's in a wheelchair or he's in a wheelchair. Who knows? Those are all possibilities. So things like that we have to think about before we really look at this and say we're going to cut off a couple thousand square feet. So I don't know where you want to go from here. So any comments, Councillor McClellan?
I say we cut the office part of it by a minimum of 2,000, preferably 2,500 square feet. And it's still leaving you close to 3,000 square feet.
Okay, would you want to make, you want discussion first, and then you can make a motion? Does anybody have any other options here? Any other thoughts? Okay, so Councillor McClellan, you want to make that in the form of a motion that you reduce the size of our office space?
I ask that we reduce the size of the office space by a minimum of 2,000, preferably 2,500 square feet.
So one or the other, please, for the motion. 2,000?
2,500, then, let's go. You're going to
Okay.
force the issue? We'll go to 2,500.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Can I have a mover for that, please? Mover, sorry, seconder. Councillor Gilmore. Discussion to reduce the office space, not the bays, the office space side of the building by 2,500 square feet. Any discussion on that? Councillor Gilmore?
So just so we're clear, we're going to refer the matter back to staff to come up with a new floor plan
2,500 feet less.
that's 2,500 square feet smaller than what we've got. Is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and we would work with the architect on that.
Okay, and Mr. Architect, just before we vote on that, Mr. Architect, Sir Stephen, is that doable, or is that really?
Oh, anything is doable, but so that means that the admin staff would stay where they currently are in that building once this new one is built. Because once you take off 2,500 square feet, that's all of the office space and the training room and the kitchen and the lunch association room. So it would just basically be a bare bones fire station, volunteer fire station.
Okay,
Is that correct?
That's what we're seeing?
I'm okay with
So it's
that.
just the bays, there's no real other part of the fire department, it's just the 4 bays, I believe, is what is going to happen.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Gilmore?
Well, it's more than just the 6 bays, actually, not 4. And,
4.
well, and the washrooms and all that. And then possibly there's a way to lay it out so that training room can be up in the mezzanine area. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes back. You know, I will say I'm quite conflicted about all this because when I look at it in the big picture, you know, I debate with myself whether it is the right thing to do. I don't think that it's fair to say, though, that just because someone says you can afford something, that you should afford it. So that's a bit of a problem for me, and I do understand the numbers, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Just because someone says you can afford it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So I want to see what this looks like, and maybe maybe we won't like it.
No.
But I'd rather see it now versus let it go to tender, and then we decide we don't want any of it, and 2 or 3 or however many contractors have done a lot of work, and we decide, no, we're not even going to do that. So.
Okay, so I'm wondering if we just simply don't defer this back to staff with instructions to reduce it by 2,500 feet, to work with the architect to bring forward that design and let us look at that. Councillor McClellan.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Steve. Steve, Councilor Gilman made a very good point. The mezzanines that we have on what should be Bay 4 and 8, or if you're kind of looking at it,
Yep.
could we run those mezzanines right across over those 2 trucks and still have headroom? Like,
No, you couldn't. And the other thing about if you put training up there, there's no air conditioning in the bays. So working on the second level mezzanine, that was mostly going to be storage up there.
Okay, just asking. Well, I guess the question is, I don't have your number right in front of me here for what it was for your build-out, but for those mezzanines, you said there was a line item number? Mezzanines with railings. So you've got it at $30,000. So if we were, okay, so you're saying we can't get it with the trucks where they are. If we move,
Well, we could, but we'd have to raise up the entire roof of the
no,
to be able to get.
So if the mezzanine, if the 2 truck bays, we still will have 6 bays. You move the 2 truck bays to the outside walls. You put the 2 mezzanines together, then on top of that, you can get up there. If we put a room in and air condition it, you're going to get a room. This is 42 feet by, each of your bays is probably 18. No, it's 14-foot door. You have space in between, so on both sides. So you're somewhere between 16 and 18 feet in there. So you're 48 feet by 42 feet you could end up with for a room upstairs, which is almost, it's bigger than what we're asking. So you could still get your storage up there.
Okay, I look to the chief.
That's the picture I got.
So if you're talking about moving those mezzanines down the one side, that's fine if you're looking to put the training room up there, but we did investigate 2-story, and as soon as you get into occupying that second space, you have to have 2 means of egress as well as an elevator, which carries annual costs. We already talked about 2-story building, and that's why we didn't present that.
Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, why do you have to have an elevator for firefighters?
Again, if you don't, it's a discriminatory policy because not all firefighters have to walk. You have administrative staff that have a right to that property or to that room.
So can we not put in an elevator that's what the churches all put in and libraries and different places, the little ones that just lift you up? Might take you 4 minutes to get up there, but you're still getting upstairs.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps the architect could speak to that.
Yeah, Mr. Architect, Steve.
Very true. You can put the smaller lifts in there, but there's also an annual maintenance fee on those as well, too. So whether you have a full-service elevator or one of the smaller, one-person lifts, you still have a maintenance cost every year. Plus the cost to put it in. Plus, like Morgan said, you do need 2 means of egress from upstairs.
We have 2
And
stairs.
Well, right now we do, yes. So we'd have to do one either side, like if we left that like that. But then we'd also have to put a separate heating, cooling system up in that area as well if it's going to be an occupied space. Plus walls, plus lighting and everything else. Because right now it's just basically designed as, upstairs in a garage with just tube heaters and no air conditioning. So if you're going to change it to an occupied space, that 30,000 would be closer to probably 75 to 90,000.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cridlin?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. I think we're trying to design it here, and I liked the motion that was on the floor, where we're going to let the designer come back with something that's, a smaller version, and see if it's feasible.
True, because when that comes back, if we don't like it, we can work off that again. Okay, so the motion was on the floor by Councillor McClellan to reduce the size of the fire building on the administrative side by 2,500 square feet. And we had a mover, seconder was Councillor Gilmore. Any other discussion on that? Councillor Van Vliet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we send it back and cut it down, are we not then going backwards again? Because we wanted to have more space. If we're going to cut it down by 2,500 square feet, then in 5 years, hey, you know what? We didn't make it big enough. It's going to cost us more money. I think we're just, again, going backwards. 2 step forwards, 3 step backwards. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and from what I understand, part of the reason for the office space being so large and everything is because it does need to be disabled accessible and all that in the hallways and everything. So it's very conflicting. As Councillor Gilmore says, it's very challenging for us to figure this out. We want to reduce the cost of it. However, 20, 30 years from now, which isn't really long, we could easily have staff working in there who have disabilities. And so we have to think that way as well. And I'm also conflicted on that. I think for me, what trumps all is to make it last for 75 years. After all, that we looked at option 7 as having a 75 plus year lifespan. We're going to spread this purchase out over 20, 30 years. Wainfleet is going to grow. We are going to be able to manage it. But then I come to Councillor Gilmore's comment, just because we can afford doesn't mean we should. It's very conflicting here because we look at what we can afford today and what we need today versus what we will need down the road. And by chopping it down to a smaller size, we're definitely looking at today. By leaving it as is, or maybe even reducing it just a little bit, 1,000 square feet, we're looking down the road. One of the things that I took away when we went to the fire halls was how often the chiefs there said, yeah, they weren't thinking very large term here. They weren't thinking for the future when they designed this, whatever. That comment from a couple of the chiefs when I was talking to them really struck home with me. And so they're in buildings that are 20 and 30 and 40 years old, and they're already outgrown them. They don't work well for them because the forward-looking design wasn't there when they were built. And you can't predict the future, but at the same time, 5 million more people are coming to the Golden Horseshoe by 2050. 5 million. There will be pressure into Wainfleet. This is known. It's been researched to death. So we have to plan for the future in many ways. And so, we don't want to be ripping the end wall out in 10 years and at double the cost, adding on to it. So that's Councillor McClellan.
I get everything you say, but this generation should not pay for something that they're only going to get 30 years out of. In 30 years, if we need to add on to it, let the next group of people that are here pay for the addition. We shouldn't build something that's going to be waste of space. We're going to heat it. We're going to electrify it. We're going to maintain it. For 30 years without having to do we don't need the space. Your argument, we're asking taxpayers to pay a heating bill, a lighting bill, the maintenance on this whole building for 30 years that we don't need people in there for. When it's time to do that, add on to it. And that's why we should ask the architect or whoever gets this job to design it so that we can add on to it very easily. And I don't care if we spend a little more money and put the right size septic bed in now so it's there. I don't have a problem with that. But it's make sure that you can add to it, but let's not do it right now and saddle these people that are in town now paying this bill for something that, I agree with you, is coming down the road. But we have 2 other fire stations that need a whole lot of work too.
And fire trucks.
We can't blow our budget on one place.
Yeah. Chief, you had your hand up.
Trust me, I agree. And I mean, that's, again, this station was born out of the priorities and needs that you communicated to me. We're trying to right the wrongs of past and prepare ourselves for the future, and it is that exact mentality that got us in this mess that we're trying to fix. And we're repeating the same mistakes over and over by not planning, and we all know the cost of construction, inflation's about 7% a year. So 2,500 square feet now, it's going to cost way more down the road.
Councillor Cridland.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and ask to call the question, please.
Okay. We have to get to the end of this sooner or later, but the discussion part of it is obviously vital. So the motion was to refer this back to staff to work with the architect to reduce 2,500 square feet from the size of the fire hall. We had a mover and a seconder on that motion, and now I call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Okay, we move on now to the Central Fire Station Project Charter. So that, I guess that is null and void at this point. Well,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with, unless the chief has any suggestion, perhaps that is something that we can leave to the next meeting, along with the right proposal for proceeding to RFP, whatever. And then perhaps members of council would like to take a break.
sorry, what was the last part there?
Recess.
Oh, yes. Okay. Move we have a recess seconder. Okay, all in favor of having a recess? That's carried. We'll break for 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. No, listen, if we take 2,500 square feet off it, they can still give the guys a kitchen. They can still do that. There's all kinds of things you can do. You know, I know, I'm just. No, I know, but like Terry said, my bank manager keeps asking me, why the hell I don't have a cottage in Muskoka? You can, she said you can afford it. Yeah, I can, but I won't use it that much, so it's not worth it to me. Yeah, I know, I give it to you.
Okay, we'll call this meeting back to order.
I wanted to buy a cottage and she wouldn't let me.
So, Will, I'm looking at the fire station project charter. That simply is null and void. We'll skip that in the agenda because it's no longer applicable. And I think we're at the COVID report. And I'll look to the CAO to give an update on our COVID activities.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, at this time, we're introducing our sort of monthly COVID-19 update report. We've been continuing operations of our emergency operations center throughout the entire emergency process. This report identifies that we have actually scaled it back yet another step. Again, moving from original daily meetings to bi-week or twice a week down to once a week. And now we have further scaled back as we proceed through our recovery phase. And we have sort of reduced the attendance at the staff or at the meeting to command staff and direct departmental operating staff, as opposed to the broader group. So we do have, I think, 2 individuals that have dropped off from the group that used to attend on a regular basis. Aside from that, again, we have proceeded into stage 3, and again, as noted in here, we are moving to trying to recover and permit more in-person activities at Town Hall. As you see, we've introduced the screens to sort of separate members of council, to permit meetings to be occurring back in the council chambers. We have included additional safety barriers in main reception. We do have one right behind us here that separates the sort of office side or the administration side from the public gallery, and so on and so forth. We've also adopted a new policy regarding face coverings, which is required to be in place in accordance with the region's bylaw, which was enacted towards the end of July. That pretty well summarizes the sort of activities to date. At this time, the next things that we're working on is looking towards the fall, and we're just putting plans in place. The ice surface at the arena will be going in. We're just working out final details about how the facility will be operating, and likewise the exact timing of the installation of the ice. Right now, we're keeping our fingers crossed that it'll go in pretty well the same time as it has in the past. But the big hurdle is getting the parameters for ice usage and rentals in place based on guidelines from the ministry or the regional health department as well as the province. So that's pretty well the update that we have at this time.
Thank you very much. So admin staff report, ASR 27-2020, respecting COVID-19 impact report be received as information. Mover seconder, Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore. Any other discussion on that? Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to William. I know in Welland, and I know we don't want to copy everybody, but what they're doing is for minor hockey, and that the kids come dressed with skate guards on, and there's only one parent allowed, and you have to stand by at the back end, and when it's full, when there's no more 6-foot spaces, nobody else gets in. It's kind of tough and lousy, but...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Pelham and Niagara Falls are the other 2 arenas that are operating in a very similar fashion. Like I say, we are working on our own guidelines as well as attempting to accommodate these sort of ever-changing provincial rules and health regulations. So yes, that worst-case scenario, that is the type of thing that we'll be looking at here. But again, we're looking at all the opportunities to try and make it as friendly and inviting as we can here in Wainfleet.
Okay, any other discussion? Councillor Cridlin?
Through you, Mayor, two things. One's a comment. Thank you for making it so safe up here for me with all those regulations that you're having to manage. So you've done a great job. And then just second, on the report, we are looking for the funding assistance. And I think you updated us before on that. That's kind of a fixed number that's come. It's a one-time number. Do you happen to know if there's a way now to consider, looking back, the costs of the beaches and what we've had to do because of the really huge shift in what we saw now looking back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at our next council meeting, it's our goal, our hope, to bring back a financial update. Sort of, we're entering the third quarter now in September. So we're looking at having that coming back on September 22nd, I believe, is our next regular meeting. So we'll have that. We'll have some information for you, giving you an update on what's been spent to date on COVID, as well as, again, as referenced in this report, we did receive a one-time payment of $195,100 that is applicable from a COVID sort of recovery and support assistance from the senior levels of government. So we'll bring something for you to the next meeting.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, it's on the floor. Ask everybody to vote. All in favor of receiving that report, and that is carried. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the Wainfleet beaches, and look to our CAO to speak to that, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. This report is intended to address, I guess, some of the beach issues that Wainfleet has been facing over the course of the last several months, and sort of followed or follow up to the last council meeting where, as part of the COVID update report, staff introduced a number of options and alternatives to deal with complaints and issues that we've been facing. At the last meeting, there was a draft bylaw to regulate municipal beaches that was introduced. During those discussions, there was some direction that we move forward on that new beach bylaw. But in the interim, we received a number of comments, both from members of the public, from businesses, and so on and so forth. And rather than proceeding with the passage of the bylaw this evening, the recommendation that we're making at this time is that we sort of engage the community, engage the public one more time in order to make sure that the legislation or the regulations that we're looking at putting in place adequately address the issues as well as capture all the issues that need to be addressed. So the first part of this report deals with proposing a public meeting be held, preferably before the end of September, in order to get input from the community regarding beaches, beach operations, beach regulations. The meeting is proposed to be conducted both in person and via Zoom, so that members of the public that may not be resident to Wainfleet might be precluded from attending Wainfleet meetings, or who might be unable to come to the community hall where we're planning to hold it, can Zoom in and participate electronically. The goal would be to provide information. It would be a sort of two-way information sharing opportunity where we can provide some information about the issues we've been dealing with, receive information from them about what their concerns and focuses are, and then we would be able to take that away, fine-tune the bylaw, and then be able to return with sort of new regulatory structure and framework moving forward into 2021. The second part of this report addresses the direction that was received from Council at the last meeting regarding enforcement of the zoning bylaw with respect to use of private property parking for beach and other uses off-site. following the meeting, we did actually have some of the businesses reach out to us, and we did have a meeting that was held on Friday, August 7th. So I guess the meeting was on the Tuesday. On the Friday, we had the meeting, and we actually had a good exchange. Not only did we sort of provide information to the property owners about sort of our understanding of the rules and regulations and some of the constraints that we saw when we look at the zoning bylaw specifically, but the property owners also provided us some good information about some of the stuff that has happened historically in the township, including a lakefront enhancement strategy and efforts by previous councils to attempt to encourage or improve parking and that sort of thing in the vicinity of, specifically in this case, Augustine beach access. So in light of the information that was presented and shared, we did actually have a delegation earlier this evening that provided even more supplemental information. And at this time, we're going to continue to work with the businesses to further explore the issues that we are facing. They have actually retained the services of a solicitor to represent them. A copy of the solicitor's letter is attached to my report as information or as reference, along with some of the earlier documentation from about 5-6 years ago that progressed through council. With all of that said, the goal or the thinking is that if we are able to hold a public hearing, a public consultation session before the end of this month, certainly some of the issues and direction that we've discussed previously, we'll be able to discuss further at that meeting to get some more input, and then we'll be able to incorporate that into a plan moving forward as to how to address the concerns that we currently have in the COVID environment, as well as what's going to happen in 2021. So at this stage, I guess that summarizes the report. Again, what we're proposing is a public meeting to be held at the community hall, both for in-person attendees who we'd like to have sort of register in advance so that we have a sort of controlled crowd, if you will. Again, we are still trying to balance COVID assembly numbers in public places, but also provide an opportunity for electronic participation for those who are unable to attend in person, or for those who are out of the country or out of the city or out of the township in the big city or wherever they might live, so that they can still participate if they so desire. I think we looked at a couple of potential dates, and I think September 23rd, which is a Wednesday, was one free date that looked like would work, and the other alternative was 1 week after that, so that would be September 30th. So those are the two dates that staff are throwing out as being potential workable dates for the public meeting. And like I said, we would be able to provide some additional information online for people to read up and be able to provide input via surveys and that sort of thing between now and then. That's the summary of the report, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to respond.
Okay, thank you. So admin staff report ASR 28-2020 regarding Wainfleet beaches be received, and that a public meeting be scheduled to receive input from the public regarding beach issues, options, and alternatives. We'll put this on the floor, then we'll decide the date that we like that would work for everyone. So a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. And discussion on the dates, the 23rd or the 30th. Councillor McClellan.
I have one question before we go after a date. Do you know when the ice is going into the arena, and would that not be a better place? Because the little hall over here, I think we're going to be bulging it.
We can't Zoom, or we can't do the electronic stuff in there. We already talked, we've looked at that.
We can't do it.
And so, yeah, it's just too complicated, and the ability for the Zoom to work properly and everything. So we decided the fire hall building, the hall there, but we're going to have to, we've had a long discussion on that. We're going to go with the 50 people, and then they'll have to wear masks if they're within 6 feet, and everyone else will have to Zoom in We're going to put all that on the website, so it's understood, and so if you can participate from home, that's the first thing I said too, was can we do it in the arena, but there's no ability to Zoom there, and the audio isn't very good, the whole issue, so. Councillor Van Vliet?
Are we just discussing the date or other?
Yeah, let's give the dates, 23rd or the 30th.
Okay, so I had other things to talk about regarding the beaches, so if we're not going to do it, then that's okay.
Okay.
Can I?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, one concern I have is that our website does have Augustine Beach. They're advertised. It's not a beach, it's a road allowance. We don't have any other road allowance in the township advertised. So I'm wondering if we could just get rid of that, because when I'm looking at the January 6, 2015 meeting, there was a picture handed out that shows the township owning a lot of land that we don't own. So I'm not sure where that information came from, but that's misinformation. So if somebody's going by what was handed out in 2015, it's most definitely not correct.
Okay, we can, yeah, we can look at that. Definitely, if it's misinformation on the website, we want to fix that, so.
Because it doesn't, it's not a beach, it's a road access. And
Yes, we own 66 feet.
Right.
The rest is privately owned.
Right, so but it says Augustine Beach.
Right.
I'm just wondering if we could
It's
take
one
that
of our
off.
beaches, sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay.
We can make, Amber's here, she's probably got that already half changed. She's so efficient.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll take that as direction to review what's on the website,
Thank you.
correct it, and move from there.
Okay. Any discussion on the dates for this public meeting, 23rd or 30th? I'm good for both.
I'm good for both.
23rd, I was thinking, 23rd, September 23rd? Mm-hmm. Okay, September 23rd for the public meeting. And we want to make sure that we advertise that well to all stakeholders, everybody who has interest. And we'll have to work on that in regards to the first 50 people into the hall are there, and then unless the numbers change, COVID numbers change between now and then the rest have to Zoom in and that sort of thing. So, Mr. CAO.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll also be reaching out to WeStream to see if we might not be able to have them attend to make sure that the broadcast is well done and visible and listenable to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McClellan.
So my question is, how are we going to get this information out to our American residents? Because
I'm going to guess that it will go fairly easy through the Long Beach Homeowners Association. Mr. Goodwill is shaking his head no. It'd have to be emails?
no.
We do not.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will try to do whatever we can to get that information out. As indicated, we do not have telephone numbers. We do not have email addresses. We have mailing addresses for people, but frankly, there's no sort of easy way to be able to extract the ones that may or may not be interested in this. So it will be a public information campaign that will need to be undertaken, sort of as outlined in the report, to try and do it via social media, via whatever means we can to get that message out.
Mr. Goodwill, you have a comment? Okay, that would be great. Would you, once you've done that, would you CC me that email or send it to me as well so I know that you've reached out to him? We want to make sure we have everybody there that's got an interest in the beach area there, so, because... Yeah, we'll get, once we reach out, even if Mr. Ball is our main contact person, we can connect everything through him. If he advises us that he can reach out to everybody, then we'll use him as our contact point and the information will flow from there. Yeah, that would be great to have that information, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will set all that up on our website as part of our sort of registration and education package. As I indicated, we'll make sure information's available on the site about what is owned by whom and all that sort of stuff, so that everyone comes in and has a sort of informed, similar starting point for the discussions that we'll have.
Yeah, and bearing in mind that's 3 weeks away, so a bit more work for the staff to get extra on there. So, okay, we've read the motion, we've had our discussion. All those in favor of receiving that and having that public meeting, in favor, and that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we move on to the shared services review, and I look to Mr. Colassa to give an overview of that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this report is being provided as information only at this time, as a result of the sort of the fallout of the provincial government's regional governance review that happened to regional governments across the province. There was a grant program that was put in place to try and assist municipalities in searching out or finding efficiencies, finding means to improve effectiveness, and improve services to the citizens. The township made application under the program, as did a number of other municipalities. Unfortunately, we were not successful in receiving a grant directly to the township. However, we did partner with a number of our neighboring municipalities to look at various items of business that are conducted by the township. And this report represents the sort of initial response and study that was undertaken in conjunction with our partners in Port Colborne, Welland, Pelham, and West Lincoln. So at this time, we are continuing to explore and review the contents of it and see if there are opportunities to make things, services better in Wainfleet, services more effective, services more efficient, and hopefully services in a less costly manner. Unfortunately, to be blunt, as a result of the study that was done, the study revealed that we are actually pretty well at the minimum service levels, minimum costs right now, and that any sort of improvements in any of the areas that we're looking at are ones that are going to result in additional cost to the township. That said, as I said, we will continue to explore the options and see if there is opportunity to move forward. There are some critical areas that do need attention, and we will probably be reporting back in the coming months on the impacts of this. I should also give you a heads up that I know regionally there's another initiative that's being fast-tracked as well at the CAO level, and there'll be more on that coming forward in the coming months as well.
Okay, thank you. Just put it on the floor. Admin staff report ASR 29-2020 respecting a shared services review be received as information. Mover seconder, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Cridlin, and discussion. Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Great report. Nice to get a report card where we pretty much got an A in all three categories. So kudos to the staff. I mean, first glance, I didn't go into detail, so I'll look forward to your report. But it doesn't look like it's a high priority report for us at the moment, and it might be for the other municipalities, but no, it's nice to be told we're doing things efficiently. So well done, and I guess money well spent, because it tells us we're doing things right. So.
Yeah, we signed that document, I don't know when, probably back in about April or May. I met with the other mayors in Thorold Chambers, and we signed it. And one of our questions was, why isn't everybody else in Niagara Region doing this? And so I think actually we've spoken about that at Regional Council about everybody getting on board in a procurement way and making things more efficient. So hopefully that comes forward. Okay, mover seconder, we've had that. Any discussion? That's finished. Any more? Okay, all in favor of receiving this report, and that is received. Drainage staff report, and we have Mark.
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So drainage staff report, this is our first apportionment agreement for 2020. We typically complete a few of these each year. They allow severances to be captured within our assessment schedules on the municipal drains, allowing for equitable billing on our drain maintenance activities.
And drainage staff report 005-2020 respecting apportionment agreement car routes be received, and that the agreement on shared of assessment attached hereto as Appendix A be approved. Mover seconder for that, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor McClellan. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of receiving that? And that is received. Thank you. Public Works Staff Report 008-2020, the award of engineering for Lakeshore Road Retaining Wall Project.
Mr. Mayor, just before moving on, not only was that last one received, but it was also, direction was given that the agreement be approved. So just wanted to make sure council is also approving the execution of the agreement on the part of the township.
Right. It was read in the motion, but I just missed it on the summation. Okay, and now we're looking for Mr. Nan.
Through your worship to members of council, good evening. This report is regarding the Lakeshore Road Retaining Wall project that was identified in 2017 through our roadside safety program, and the report that was created by Associated Engineering back in 2017. It was identified as a roadside hazard, and as staff decided to venture out and view the neighborhood and talk to all the neighbors that are affected potentially by the wall, the project grew into some drainage issues, not just an erosion issue, but also some additional drainage issues. As a result of that, staff this year investigated, and of course, because we're putting in a larger scope, including storm sewer and a retaining wall, we have to do some additional studies, which means an environmental assessment was required because of the storm sewer installation and because the outlet going to the municipal drain. Staff prepared a RFP. We advertised locally as well as through the construction associations to get the word out. We had 4 individual companies submit RFPs. Staff did a evaluation review on the proposals that were submitted, and included in the report is the scoring numbers for that review by staff. And staff are submitting the report to award the engineering and the environmental assessment to the highest scoring company that submitted their proposal.
Okay, thank you. So, report PWSR 008-2020 respecting award of engineering for Lakeshore Road Retaining Wall Project be received, and that council directs staff to award the environmental assessment and design of Lakeshore Road Retaining Wall Project to Urban Environmental Management based on the highest scoring of the proposal evaluation for $73,819.07. So mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor Cridland. And discussion, please. Councillor Cridland.
Through you, Mayor. I'm not sure who it goes to. This is part of one of the capital projects. So I just want to go backwards to know where we are in the whole project. This budget we approved, I think, just the 85, but we were carrying forward some money. And then isn't this one that we started in 2019? So I'm not sure if that's to Treasury. So in Treasury, in 2019, it looks like there was 250, and then it was complex, and then we carried it forward. So if there's someone that can just get me up to date as to where this is as a capital project, not necessarily with all the details, but maybe where I could find them. Thank you.
Okay, and that would be our CAO would speak to that, probably, or Richard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps we could start with Richard, if he's online.
To your worship, yes, the original project was presented in 2019 as a capital project. Through the investigation process and speaking with all the residents, the project actually expanded beyond what the original scope was, because the original scope was just to build some retaining walls and put up some guide rails. But because there was some additional flooding issues on neighboring properties, it expanded. So therefore, the project was bumped forward to this year. We actually didn't incur the costs, and the project didn't move forward last year. But because it was expanded, now we had to get into an environmental assessment. Therefore, this year, the phase 1 portion is $85,000. And then next year's budget will include, once we're completed the design work and everything, next year's budget will include phase 2, which is the actual construction portion of this. So we'll be submitting that on next year's budget.
Okay, Councillor Cradley?
Thank you, Richard. Then through you, Mayor, just so when we did this in 2019, there was about $193,000 that we had there on the capital budget. Then where would I find that money in our records? Like, how is that recorded so that I can follow it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps the treasurer can speak to that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So yeah, so that was in our budget in 2019, budgeted to come from our gas tax funds. So in our reporting to the province on how that money was spent, that money will still show us sitting there. So it's just carried forward until we go to spend that money. And then once we start that project, then we notify them through our annual reporting that that's the project that we've started. Because it is one that qualifies, and then we just report our expenditures to them at that time.
Okay, further? Anything else? Okay. Any other questions on that? Okay, seeing none, motion's on the floor, discussion is finished. All in favor of receiving and giving that direction to staff? All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we come to a letter from Anissa Watts requesting a public meeting on the fire hall. And I look for discussion on that as to input from the council on her request. Any discussion, input? Councillor McClellan?
To you, Mr. Mayor, so as we've seen tonight, we're not sure where we're going with this yet, so when we have it designed, no, I said we're not sure where we're going with this. Well, maybe we should just wait till we figure out where we're going and get some real numbers to this before we go to the public. And maybe we just advertise it in the paper that this is where we're going and this is what we're at, and be done with it. But take some comments and...
Okay, other discussion on that about a public meeting request? Mr. Will?
As mentioned by Councillor McClelland, we can put some information up on the website. I know the fire chief has recently just added a complete website page that highlights or reviews the complete history of the project with all the background documentation right back to day one, as in a decade plus, 15 years ago, starting back 15 years ago. So we do have a complete project history up on the website, all the documentation. We will put up additional information regarding tonight's direction from council. And likewise, as indicated by the councillor, if there is appetite or information that the members of the public are seeking, or additional information that isn't readily apparent in the website, we can sort of ask that they submit their questions to us in the meantime in writing ahead of time, which we can either address electronically in the meantime, or which could help form sort of a future basis for engagement at a future date.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I take this from some of the social media that was brought to my attention, was some of that is still questioning whether even to build a fire station. And I think we're past that stage. A meeting would be for information purposes. Very much everything is on the website. We've been extremely open about it. You can read everything that you want on the website. So as our CAO said, it would simply be an in-person meeting. It would not be at the point where we're saying whether or not we build a fire hall. We're past that point, so that public information will just be for information purposes if you can't find it on the website. So any other discussion?
Through you, Mayor. Again, having an engaged public is what we're hoping for, so I want to thank the writer for making a request to add more information to the public domain. But again, since that letter, we do understand that the chief has gone and put an awful lot more information in the realm that this particular request lives, so that it's in social media. So if that's on our website, and I think you also added an FAQ. So let's see if the website works. So if we ask them to even try the website with their FAQ, send us the comments. I know the chief is extremely responsive for questions. But again, I want to thank the writer for, the engagement aspect of this is really important for us. If there's missing information, we'll fill it in. And, if we wait maybe, 30 days to see if the website is active, then we know maybe we've met this need. So I'm okay with receiving this, but then just keep listening if there's a need for more information.
All very good points. Thank you, Councillor Cridlin. Any other discussion? So we just have a motion from Councillor Cridlin to receive this letter from Ms. Watts. Okay, that motion is made. Mover, seconder. Councillor Van Vliet, Councillor McClellan, and all in favor of receiving it, and it is received. Thank you. Okay, now we're into bylaws. Reading that the following bylaws be read and passed this first day of September 2020. Bylaw number 34, 2020 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 42, 2010 being a bylaw to adopt municipal and private road names in the Township of Wainfleet. And bylaw number 35, 2020 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a subdivision agreement with SAW Developments Incorporated. And that's it. They're adopted. We have to vote. Mover, seconder. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Van Vliet, all in favor of receiving? Thank you. Those are passed. Okay, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? I look to our CAO for.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is one notice of motion that was provided by council at its last meeting. After some closed session deliberations regarding potential litigation, there was an opportunity for council to resume an open session wherein a notice of motion was given about the potential of reconsidering a bylaw passed by council earlier this year. At this time, I wonder if I could ask the planner, if she's online, to be able to speak to this document or this notice of motion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So as the CAO mentioned, Council received an update on the official plan amendment, which dealt with lands left without a designation through the official plan process. So they received an update on August 4th in closed session as it pertained to a legal matter before an administrative tribunal. And that discussion entailed various options for next steps with respect to that appeal filed by the region of Niagara. After resuming an open session, a notice of motion to reconsider and rescind the official plan amendment was given. The purpose of that notice of motion being to facilitate discussion regarding whether or not council wanted to reconsider or rescind the official plan amendment that was adopted earlier this year, and to have that discussion in an open session this evening. So I guess I'll open the floor to council to have that discussion. I'll just add one comment to start it off. If council chooses to repeal the bylaw that adopted the official plan amendment, there was a section approved by council that did comply with provincial and regional planning policy, and that's the lands adjacent to Osterham Corners. So I would recommend that if council goes down the route to repeal the bylaw, that the section dealing with the lands adjacent to Osterham Corners not be repealed, that remain in effect, so that those lands could be the designation could become permanent. And then we go back to the drawing board with the other lands that were subject of the appeal.
Okay, discussion, Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this would be to Sarah. The lands in Osterham Corners, it wasn't a full piece that went from one side road from Burnaby Road east all the way across to the next road. It was just a portion of that, roughly how many acres?
41, I think, I recall. The total amount from that.
No.
At Osterham?
No. It was somewhere in the 12 to 13 acre parcel, I think. Yeah.
Sarah, do you remember?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have the acreage in front of me, but it was like a partial. So the property, one of the properties in question that it was involved in this official plan amendment does go from road to road, but only half of it was proposed as being within the hamlet at the time of our official plan. So only half of it currently doesn't have a land use designation. So we were only dealing with a certain portion of the subject property. And staff, myself and the consultant had recommended rural area, and that is the designation that council approved through the bylaw.
Okay, further, Councillor McClellan?
No, that answered.
Okay. Other discussion? Okay, a motion from Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would move that we repeal the bylaws suggested by the planner and subsequently exclude the land at Osterham Corners.
Okay, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be an excellent secondary motion. The primary motion that you need to put on the floor and vote on first is the actual motion to reconsider. And if you are willing to reconsider it, then the reconsideration could take the form of the motion that Councillor Gilmore just raised.
Okay, so the motion from Councillor Gilmore is to reconsider.
So move.
So moved.
I had another question before we go there.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question is again to the planner. Just refresh my memory. The rest of these properties, they will still end up as land without a designation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. So we'll have to go back to the drawing board and identify options for moving forward, because we can't leave these lands without a designation.
So my next question would be then, has the region given you any indication of what they would accept? There's no sense us doing this 2 or 3 times, right? So let's try and get it. You know, what are they willing to accept as a designation?
We had a meeting with them, and Sarah, go ahead with that information.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of what they're willing to accept at the moment is the designations that staff had recommended being agricultural area. However, there is opportunity through the regional official plan process to have a look at these areas and determining the best way forward for getting the desired outcome. I do have some meetings coming up with the region to talk about their official plan process and kind of Wainfleet's involvement in that. And so these lands that are left without a designation is on the agenda for that. So that meeting is coming in the next couple of weeks. And so depending on that outcome, I can update council as to options to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, discussion? Okay, where was I? Motions on the floor To reconsider.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion to reconsider.
Reconsider.
Oh, just a minute. Yeah, you need
Yeah,
a
we need a
second.
seconder on the reconsideration. Councillor McClellan seconds it. All in favor to reconsider, and that is carried. And now for the previous motion, if you want to state that again. I know that's
What did I say?
It was the lands at Osterhon Corner
Right,
that we put them.
that we go ahead and repeal the bylaw and exclude the land from Osterhon Corners.
Okay, and I have a seconder for that, Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion on that? Mr. CAO?
Just other than if this motion passes, we will be coming back to you at the next meeting with the actual bylaw and the necessary information to actually make that happen.
And it will only be the portion that's in.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion now to go into closed session. Made by Councillor Gilmore, seconded by Councillor McClellan. All in favor of going to closed session? That is carried. We are now into closed session.